to the sun, good morning, sun. Rise and shine today. You know you've gotta get going if you're gonna make a showing. And you've got the right of way, 'cause it's a good day for paying your bills, and it's a good day for curing your ills. So take a deep breath and throw away your pills. It's a good day from morning till night.
Thank
you. You guys, wow, I think we all really needed that. Woo! I don't know, I just feel a little lifted. Thank you. In honor of our fearless leader, I would like to say it's a good day for a three-peat. Yeah. All right. Kristen Tuxbury has been a member of this fellowship since 2014. She's served as vice president, on the nominating committee, taught OWL, and in other roles. She was a school counselor in Orange and Stafford counties for 7 years and is now finishing her doctoral degree in counselor education at Virginia Commonwealth University. Many of her classes include elements of critical race theory, readings from the scholars who contribute to the theory, and now Kristen integrates these readings and ideas into her classes and research. She now understands why there is such a push to ban teaching these ideas in schools. They're powerful, and once learned, cannot be unlearned. Please welcome Kristen Tuxbury.
Hi, everyone. Happy February. Happy Black History always. I'm going to say a lot of things today that are not going to be a surprise. I'm also definitely going to say some things that probably will be a surprise. So before we get into this stuff, let's see. I just want to invite us to take a second and center ourselves and maybe set an intention of approaching this with an open mind and an open heart. So I invite you, if you want to take a comfortable posture, to close your eyes if that feels comfortable, and to kind of focus on this intention of coming to this with openness.
Let me see!
Looks like some quite new kind of eruption.
What's going to happen?
I don't think that's the sound. All right. One more time.
Breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe
you. So, and I'll just let you all know what I tell my students, that when emotions come up for you today, try and approach them with curiosity. Like, what is that feeling? Where did it come from? What might it mean? So, the civil rights movement resulted in a lot of really historic legislation. We all know this. This picture is the signing of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. As people were celebrating these accomplishments in the late 60s and early 70s, the civil rights movement was beginning to wind down and lose some steam. And because of this loss of momentum, some legal scholars were left thinking that these accomplishments had barely scratched the surface. So a couple of these scholars, Dr. Derek Bell, who was a legal scholar at Harvard, and Dr. Alan David Freeman, who was at University of Buffalo, they started to get together and write some scholarship. This is Dr. Derek Bell up there. I couldn't find a picture that I was confident was actually the correct Alan David Freeman, but he is a white man, for context. And so they started to write about how, with lots of legal examples, the true beneficiaries of the civil rights legislation were white people. And they were particularly critical of the Brown versus Board of Education decision and how it benefited white people and white children. So Derek Bell wrote Serving Two Masters in 1976, and then he wrote Brown versus Board of Education, The Interest Convergence Dilemma in 1980. And Dr. Alan David Freeman wrote discrimination, or racial discrimination and through anti-discrimination law in 1978. So they were kind of going back and forth with these conversations. And this idea of interest convergence that they were talking about said, the interests of blacks in achieving racial equality will only be accommodated when it converges with the interests of whites. Okay? So they gave lots of examples of this. We're going to come back to this idea, because first we're going to back up a little bit for some context. So let this sit and see how you feel about it when we get back to it. So for those of you that would like to, I also use Menti in all of my classes, so I integrated it. But for those of you that are unsure, you can go to menti.com and enter in this code, or you can use the QR code, and then you'll be able to kind of participate along with some of the things. I'll give everybody a second. Okay, seems like most people are okay. So when you hear critical theory, what comes to mind? What are some of the things that you think of? So not critical race theory, but critical theory. So racism and equality. So thought-provoking, maybe this like philosophical thing. Yep, equality, privilege, conflict theory, law. There's like a guy though. Anyone thinking of this guy that's like the critical guy? No? Segregation. Okay, we'll see. As soon as I bring up his picture, you're going to be like, oh, yeah, okay. All right. Fairness, yeah, research, thinking, yeah. How about this guy? Yeah. So CRT grew out of the legacy of Karl Marx, right, who was one of the original critical scholars. Marx wrote about how the Industrial Revolution and the rise of capitalism was not sustainable. His theory centered social class as the fundamental social identity of oppressive systems. So Marxism claimed that capitalism was designed to centralize wealth among a small few and to keep the impoverished poor because it depended on their labor. In this frame of thinking, all of the oppression that you feel is because of your social class. So critical race scholars criticized Marxism for centering only class in our understanding of oppression, because we know that there are other social identities that result in oppression. So now I'm going to skip forward to some of the students of Dr. Derek Bell, and I promise that there's a reason for skipping around on this. So this is Dr. Cheryl Harris, and so she wrote about an idea that she called whiteness as property. So this idea linked back to why race as a social construct was created in the first place, because it was based on property rights, right? So, what do you think was the first year that the word white was used to describe someone's racial background? (1776), 1600, 1850, 1000, 1954, 1780, we're all over the place. This is good. 1500s, 1492, yeah, okay. It was 1613, but it still really wasn't a popular thing until kind of the mid-1700s, right? So like before 1613, the word white was really only used to describe women, and it was this idea of like purity of skin color because they never went outside, right? But like it wasn't really applied to people from a specific demographic background until 1613, and again, it wasn't really popularized until the mid-1700s. Any guesses why? Because you're right. Slavery, right? So the entire idea of race as a social construct was centered around rationalizing the idea of slavery. So the United States is a settler colony, and settler colonialism is different from other forms of colonialism because colonizers in settler colonies plan to stay indefinitely. So settler colonialism centers around these three things. So like at the top here we have settlers. These were distinguished as people that were thought of as white. These people were those with the sophistication and power necessary for legal property ownership. We then have native, which was people who were savage, people who could not control themselves, and therefore people that were unfit for property ownership or any role in civilized society. So because settler colonialism depended on land theft, the native needed to be annihilated. Settler colonialism also depends on free labor. So people that were designated as black were then designated as property. So we have property owners, people that had their property taken away for just reason, and people that were property. So this is based on the work of Eve Tuck. She is an indigenous scholar and professor, in case you're interested in reading more. But without these ideas, settler colonialism cannot be rationalized.
So, before this, people were probably aware of differences based on like being able to see, right? So, a lot of these things kind of overlapped. So what do you think is the difference between race and ethnicity? So, or race, ethnicity, and religion, too. Because these things are sort of overlapping ideas in a lot of ways, as far as identity. Any ideas? Okay, let's see. Race is like skin color, so phenotype, right, is race, and ethnicity is dependent on maybe where you're from. Culture, yeah? So race is kind of a visible thing, like, so, yeah, we're getting there. Genetic makeup is a really interesting thing, and we will try and get back to that because it's been disproven. So where you were born. So they're both social constructions, right? One is a group that people put you into and determines how you are treated, which is race. The other is, ethnicity is based in culture. So it's something that's passed down through generations, yeah, by families. So someone can't tell you what your ethnicity is. That would be super weird. But people like, and there have been court cases throughout all of US history to determine who is of what racial group. So it's like something the government has power over deciding for you. So how do we know this? And how do we know that race is like a totally just made up concept? So in before 1660, a person's legal status in what's now thought of as the United States was determined by the father's legal status. That was English common law, right? So whatever your dad is like where you go. So Elizabeth Key was a slave in Virginia, and in 1656, she sued the state because her father was white for her freedom, and she won. After that, Virginia broke with English common law. They instituted partus sequitur ventrum. It's been a while since I took Latin, okay? Saying a child's legal status was determined by their mother. So we just like made it up, right? Like based on what was convenient at the time. And this set the stage for race being a central component of our entire legal system throughout the entire history of the United States. It just permeates everything, right? So some more evidence of this. In 1978, the U.S. Office of Management and Budget decided to create legal categories, or racial categories, for the U.S. Census. Yeah? They're the same categories we use today. Until 2000, you could only pick one. People of Middle Eastern descent are included in the white category. People from Spain with no connection to Latin America at all are considered Hispanic. The category of Asian and Pacific Islander includes approximately 60% of the world's population. These categories are not capturing the information that we hoped they would, right? Which is differences in the human experience by interactions with social structures. Because they're just kind of arbitrary. Yeah. So what does any of this have to do with Cheryl Harris and her idea of whiteness as property, right? So this concept of whiteness as property links to the idea that racial categories were ultimately created to determine who had the right to own property and who was considered property. So Harris argued that we can use this concept today to examine how people who are not white are required to conform to whiteness in order to access resources and in order to be treated with respect. So conforming to white supremacy is necessary to achieve societal status, including property ownership and other forms of status. One example is how children in school have to conform to social norms like the way that they speak, the way that they dress, in order to be determined successful. Even with this conformity, it only takes these students so far because their skin still results in otherness and less access to resources and respect within these environments. So this idea led to the first tenets of critical race theory, because people that have looked into this probably are like, oh, critical race theory has tenets, right? Yeah, it does. But like, there's debate. So this is Gloria Ladson-Billings. She and William Tate got together and made these first set of tenets. So they are, race continues to be a significant factor in determining inequity in the United States. The US society was based on property rights, and the intersection of race and property creates an analytical tool through which we can understand social inequity, including inequity in schools. Are there times that you feel like you've needed to conform to white supremacy standards in order to access resources? What did you have to do? Or in order to access respect? Even if you're white, these societal norms were created before you, and there may be ways that they impacted you in needing to conform a certain way, through school, through your job, military wife, deciding how you dress, weren't conscious at it at the time. Yeah. So through the new administration, pretend that you didn't grow up overseas, like hiding parts of yourself and trying to pass, right? Yeah. Going to medical appointments in your job, in your behavior, not calling out racism because it's too risky. So this impacts a lot of us. Needing to look feminine, right? We're getting to all of these overlapping things, right? So now we enter another student, yeah. Kimberly Crenshaw, Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw was another student of Dr. Derek Bell. And so up until now, we've only been talking about race and class and their intersections, but Kimberly Crenshaw was like, wait a second. There are other social identities that definitely impact the way that people are treated, and we need to look at how all those things interact together. So she said, if you don't have a lens that's trained to look at how various forms of discrimination come together, you're unlikely to develop a set of policies that will be inclusive as inclusive as they need to be. So this idea came to be known as intersectionality. So this is Dr. Crenshaw. So intersectionality is the interconnectedness of oppressive systems that create unique experiences of those who are oppressed by multiple systems. Okay? Holding multiple identities is not intersectionality. We all hold multiple identities, right? Intersectionality is being oppressed by multiple systems of power. So she supported this idea with examples of court cases where it was determined that black women were not being discriminated against because the discrimination was not directed at either their blackness or their womanness. It was directed on the fact that they are both black and woman. People won that, like, they lost their cases. There are a lot of examples of stereotypes which only apply to combinations of identities, right? I think about Latina immigrants and the stereotypes around those that do not apply to either other immigrants or other Latin people. Or stereotypes of trans women that do not apply to either cis women or trans men, right? So now we have to take a minute and stop again, because Dr. Crenshaw wrote this about intersectionality in 1988, but Latina women were writing about this way before that. They just didn't call it a fancy word, right? Marta Cotera wrote Chicana Feminism in 1977. So again, this intersection of the word Chicana is both Mexican descent and woman, right? Intersectionality right there. Gloria Anzaldúa wrote La Frontera, the New Mestiza, in 1978, or 1987, so a year before Crenshaw. And in that work, she talked about how her identities as Chicana, US citizen, indigenous, colonizer, woman, and lesbian all influenced her experience with oppression. So that is definitely intersectionality, right? So, this introduction of this intersectionality concept gave an inroad for the Lat-Crit scholars to enter this conversation, because there is also Lat-Crit and Tribal Crit and Dis-Crit and lots of other things we can talk about another day. So this is Dr. Daniel Solorzano, and he is a professor of social sciences and comparative education. And he proposed another set of CRT tenets. Yeah? There's debate among these, and I'll talk about that a little bit. But I'm going to go through each of his tenets in a little more depth with examples. Okay? So his first tenet is that racism is everywhere, right? It is the air we breathe. If we were fish, it would be the water that we're swimming in. It permeates every element of every system of power that we have in the United States. We absorb this through representations in the media and the news. There's research showing that 4-year-old children are aware not only of racial categories and which one they belong to, but also the stereotypes and social norms attributed to those categories. One way we know this is how common micro-invalidations are. So an invalidation is a statement that disregards a person's lived experience. So some examples of micro-invalidations might be things like, I didn't expect you to be so smart. Can I see the doctor? Where are you from? No, really, where are you from? You must be good at math, right? If we weren't socialized to absorb these stereotypes and assumptions, these micro-invalidations wouldn't happen unintentionally. And they do, every day. So Solorzano's second tenet, challenging the dominant ideology, is often interpreted by scholars to be a critique of liberalism. I don't mean that liberalism, okay? This is not political liberalism. This is the philosophy of liberalism, which is widely accepted across the political spectrum in the United States. So liberalism centers individual rights. It champions ideas like democracy and freedom. CRT scholars criticize this philosophy because it has no pathway for disassembling these systems of power. If each person gets one vote, there will continue to be oppression. We have to look beyond individualism for solutions to systemic oppression. I see y'all's faces. I'm hoping that this will make a little bit more sense as I go on to the third one. Okay, so stick with me here a little bit. So his third one seems really straightforward. It is a commitment to social justice, right? CRT scholars interpret this to be a warning against how interest convergence might be entering these conversations and influencing our advocacy. So an example of this is when the Human Rights Campaign continued to support the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, even after the protections for trans people were removed. This commitment to social justice challenges us to think about how our actions would influence the life of the person most impacted by the systems of oppression that we are working to dismantle. In this case, CRT scholars would challenge the Human Rights Campaign to think about how the legislation of ideas like gay marriage and rights for people to serve in the military would impact the lives of those most impacted by heterosexism and transphobia, like possibly an incarcerated trans woman of color. I'm not arguing that gay marriage is bad, okay? Or that the right to serve in the military is bad, yeah? I'm saying that we can see the interest convergence in these ideas because they ultimately benefit the people that are served by the institutions of marriage and the military, okay? So if we challenge ourselves to think about how our actions will impact those most impacted, maybe instead of lobbying towards gay marriage, we ask ourselves, why are we allowing the government to decide who a family is? Maybe there's a better way to do that. So, how are we doing with this? We still okay? Okay. So another way to think about this might be things like, we know that trickle-down economics doesn't work, right? Because money only goes one way. So rights only do that too. If we think about what actions would most impact the lives of those most impacted by these systems, it will only benefit everyone else. And maybe something like the legalization of gay marriage does not benefit everyone. So this brings us back to the arguments that Dr. Derek Bell and Dr. Alan David Freeman were making in the first place. Because they were arguing that Brown v. Board of Education ultimately benefited white people. So what was the ultimate goal of integration? It was equity of educational opportunity, right? That our kids have a right to an equal opportunity to be educated. So some of the things that happened as a result of this integration decision were that black schools were closed, and those communities lost their areas to congregate together. Black teachers were fired everywhere and thought of as no longer necessary. The National Defense Education Act of 1958 increased the emphasis on standardized testing and educational tracking because it was not illegal to segregate based on intelligence. So we had a rise in gifted education. San Antonio Independent School District versus Rodriguez made it legal to fund schools with property taxes, which funneled wealth into white schools. And when all else failed, there was the school choice movement, right? So families with resources could just send their kids to schools that could deny people outright. See how far we've gotten from the goal of equitable schooling? Are our schools less segregated now? A lot of times they're not. And if you disagree with me, I can show you information on Richmond Public Schools and talk about this through with you, because that's a really good example. So is New York City Public Schools, by the way. Do students see themselves represented in the stabs in their school now? No. And they used to. We have two more. Okay? So before we go on to the fourth one, when I say Black Panther Party, what do you think? What comes to your head? Black power, justice, rebellion, strength. Break out the catnip? I won't ask, it's okay. I'll take you at your movie, 1960s, protests, Malcolm X, yep, against current infrastructure, helping their community, propaganda, yeah. So lots of fear. School breakfast, that's where we're going, yep, We're going there. Okay, so Salarzana's last tenet, fourth tenet is the centrality of experiential knowledge. So it challenges scholars to look beyond dominant narratives and to see what other stories are hidden by these accounts. The Black Panther Party noticed the negative ramifications of integration on their community. Black kids weren't learning to read. So they opened schools. They hired black teachers. One of their most famous schools is the Oakland Community School, which was the foundation for the current charter school movement. They often allowed students to go for free. They provided food while they were there and food to their communities for free. As a result, black students learned to read. They learned the history of people that looked like them from other people that looked like them, and they were academically successful. These stories that go against the dominant narrative of history are called counter stories or counter narratives. So Salarzano's last tenet, and probably the most controversial among scholars, but we won't necessarily go there right now, is that this work needs to extend beyond legal scholarship and beyond educational scholarship. So what other subjects or disciplines or areas do you feel like should also probably be at the table of these conversations, based on the things that we've talked about? Technology, healthcare, for sure. We didn't go there, but, because, 20 minutes. Economics, science. So, banking, okay. So, housing, yeah, taxes, communication, yeah. So, religion. Yeah, so we have scholars from all of these different places, from all of the social sciences, from the medical sciences, from the biological sciences, coming to the table to talk about how the fact that the racism is the air we breathe is impacting their field and their discipline and how these things have radiated across the globe. And then the legal scholars will say that we're getting away from the point. That we need to think about how this, we really need to center in the fact that this is a huge legal problem in the United States. So anyway, and take that as a bait. So, some closing thoughts. Discomfort is good. We can lean into it and challenge ourselves to learn more. In our advocacy, how are we centering the most impacted people? And how will our actions, if successful, benefit their lives? And how are we looking for counter-narratives? Because they live all around us. Thank you. and I used all the time. What do we want to do? Okay, questions? Yeah. Okay. I'll stick around. How about that?
Thank you, Kristen.
All right, announcements. This Saturday is our big banquet. I hope you're planning to come. You need to sign up and let us know which cuisine you're going to be bringing, so we'll know what table to put you with, and we'll get that all organized, and you'll get an email back later this week to let you know who you're going to be sitting with. It's going to be a lot of fun, live entertainment. If you have not pledged yet, feel free to do so today. You can also do it at the banquet or any of the remaining Sundays here in February. So I encourage you to get involved in that. This Friday night, Valentine's Day, childcare just for you, right? It is $15 for a child or $30 for as many kids as you want to bring, and you drop them here, we'll take care of them for you. You go have a nice romantic dinner. How's that sound? Yeah. And today, 2 o'clock, our end-of-life discussion is meeting right over here in the boardroom, and we're going to be discussing this book, Love and Death, and so I encourage you to come if you're interested in end-of-life discussions. All right, joys and concerns, Kathy?
So we didn't have any written joys or concerns. So I just go to this, right? I'm going to ask you. Okay. So I am going to ask everyone to stand if you are able. If you would like to contribute financially to this fellowship, we invite you to quietly go to the back and place your gift in the offering basket, which is located near the rear exit. If you have enjoyed today's service and want to see this fellowship grow and continue to be a positive light in our community, then I encourage you to give generously to support us. Perhaps this morning you have a private joy or concern on your heart. If so, we invite you to silently come up and place a pebble in the bowl of water as a token of what you are holding in your heart. We invite everyone else to remain in a quiet and meditative spirit. We will close our service momentarily.
All right, our closing song today is Blue Boat Home. So if you know it, please join in and sing along with us.